In the start of the movie, Edmond Dantès and his closest friend, Fernand Mondego, rowed a boat to the shores of Elba to seek assistance because their ship's captain had contracted brain fever. After a dangerous encounter with the guards of the island, they were offered assistance by Napoleon Bonaparte in the form of his personal physician. Napoleon was the French emperor and he had been exiled to the island of Elba. He demanded that Edmond deliver a personal letter to a friend of his, bearing the name Clarion, as payment for the use of his physician. But unknown to Edmond, who was an illiterate, the contents of the letter were information on how to stage a potential rescue of Napoleon. Bonaparte assured Edmond that the contents of the letter were innocent, and had to be kept secret even from his closest friend, Fernand. But later in the evening when Edmond was asleep, Fernand discovered and read the letter. When they returned to France, Monsieur Morel, the owner of the shipping company, appointed Edmond as the new captain of the ship, much to the anger of Danglars, the ship's second-in-command, who didn't want Edmond to take the now-dead captain ashore for treatment. This made Edmond very happy and he ran to Mercedes, his beloved, to inform her about his new status in life. Fernand had failed to court Mercedes many times, so when Edmond informed the two about the news, he left with a quiet stupor. Edmond and Mercedes agreed to marry with a simple string as their wedding ring. Feeling jealous and depressed, a drunk Fernand revealed the contents of Napoleon's letter to Danglars and the two came up with a plan to implicate Edmond in committing a treasonous act according to the standards of the French government. Edmond was celebrating his newfound success with his father and Mercedes in the evening when he was arrested and taken to the magistrate, Monsieur Villefort. Despite the fact that he told Edmond that he's free to go, he became disturbed when he learned that the letter was to be delivered to a certain man, Monsieur Clarion, who turns out to be Villefort's own father, Noirtier Villefort. Noirtier was a very great supporter of Napoleon, but because France was transitioning away from the Napoleonic rule, and Villefort was a young man aspiring to a prominent law and political career in post-Napoleonic France, he and his father had an inconvenient relationship. In order to eliminate all evidence that his father was involved in plans to rescue Napoleon from Elba, he burned the letter and ordered for Edmond to be taken to Château d'If, a maximum security prison. Edmond escaped briefly and headed to Fernand's house to seek help, but it is there that he found out that it was Fernand who had betrayed him in the first place. He was arrested again shortly and taken to Château d'If. On his first day at Château d'If, the prison warden, Dorliac, told Edmond that he knows he is innocent. He added that there were many different prisons in France, but Château d'If is where they bring the ones they are ashamed of. He also told Edmond that starting today, and every other anniversary of his imprisonment, he would be whipped so that Edmond will not lose track of time. Edmond had strong faith in God and believed that one day God will give him justice. But as time passed, he lost his faith in God. One day, he was feeling depressed in his prison cell when he saw something coming from the ground. He became scared, but soon he realized it was a person, a man named Abbé Faria. Abbé was a fellow prisoner at Château d'If and he was under the impression that he was digging to the outer wall of the prison in order to escape, but had instead dug to Edmond's prison cell. They became inmates and in return for Edmond's help in digging the tunnel towards the opposite direction for the next 8 to 10 years, he taught Edmond how to read and write, economics, mathematics, philosophy, science and even different languages. During their time together, Edmond got to know that Abbé Faria was a soldier who had been ordered to burn down a church with rebels inside. Ashamed of what he did, he deserted the following morning and turned to religion and became a priest in order to make amends for his sins. When Abbé Faria was a soldier, he was responsible for the fortune of Caesar Spada. But Napoleon had him thrown in Château d'If to refresh his memory, after Abbé refused to reveal the location of the hidden treasure. Abbé also helped Edmond to piece together the mystery of how Fernand and the others were able to betray him. This made Edmond convince Faria to teach him how to use the sword. Their time together didn't last much longer, however, because one day when they were digging the tunnels, it caved in and fatally injured Abbé. So, Edmond dragged Abbé back to his prison cell and Abbé confessed that he lied about not knowing the location of the treasure of Spada. He died shortly after giving Edmond a map to the treasure. At that very moment, it was feeding time, so the man who brought food for the prisoners once each day knocked on Abbé's door for his plate, but no one answered. The man opened a small door and saw that Abbé was not moving. So, he left to get another guard, and Edmond quickly hid. The guards came back shortly after with a body bag, and after putting Abbé's dead body in the bag, they left to get d'Orléac. But in that time, Edmond got an idea. He switched positions with Abbé. The guards took his body to dispose off a cliff, but in an attempt to grab the keys from d'Orléac, the two of them fell into the sea below, and Edmond used the keys to escape the bag. He killed d'Orléac easily and then started to swim away from Chateau d'If. Edmond woke up ashore later in the afternoon. Feeling happy, he started shouting and jumping around and soon found that the place had been occupied by pirates. The leader of the pirates, Luigi Vampa, offered Edmond a chance to join them if he won a knife fight to the death with Jacopo, as entertainment for his crew. Jacopo had attempted to keep gold for himself instead of sharing with the crew. Edmond easily won, but he spared Jacopo's life and then convinced Vampa that both him and Jacopo's talents could be put to good use. Vampa agreed, and there, Jacopo pledged his life to Edmond. Years later, the crew made their way to Marseille. Edmond and Jacopo left together for their own adventures. Edmond told Jacopo to find a boat, and he proceeded to visit Monsieur Morel. Monsieur Morel, however, didn't recognize him. He told Edmond about how his father had hung himself believing Edmond had been killed, and also how Mercedes, his beloved, had wed Fernand Mondego, Edmond's best friend, a month after Edmond's arrest. They had now become Count and Countess Mondego and lived in Paris after Fernand's father's mysterious death. Villefort had also become a chief prosecutor after his father, Mortier Villefort's mysterious death. All his targets of revenge now lived among the Parisian high society, except for Danglars, who was now the owner of Morel's shipping company. After Edmond's visit, he and Jacopo took a boat to the island of Monte Cristo, where they found the treasure of Spada, wealth beyond anything they could have imagined. But rather than retiring to a life of leisure, he wanted to take revenge on all those who had wronged him. He therefore became the Count of Monte Cristo, threw a big party and invited all the aristocrats of society, including his enemies. Now that he had significant influence over each of his enemies, he started a series of events designed to ensure their downfall and misery. The Count established a close connection with Fernand and Mercedes by planning the abduction of their son, Albert, with the help of Luigi Vampa. By swooping in heroically to rescue Albert from his kidnappers, the Count gained access into the household of Fernand and Mercedes. Although none of his enemies recognized him, Mercedes became very suspicious from the very first time they met. Having secured a place within their lives, he turned his attention to Fernand's financial affairs. He bought the bank that managed Fernand's finances. He told other shipping companies to stay away from Mondego, deliberately applying pressure to the point where Fernand, in desperation, had no option but to return to do business with Danglars after many years later. Albert also inadvertently reveals the Count's mentioning of a Spada shipment and gold to his father, prompting Fernand and Villefort to infer that the Count had unraveled the whereabouts of Spada's concealed treasure with the next shipment imminent, not knowing it was all part of the Count's plan. Fernand, Villefort, and Danglars devised a plan to seize the next shipment, using Villefort's legal authority to legitimize their actions. However, they unknowingly fell into Edmond's carefully laid trap. As part of this scheme, Danglars was apprehended while attempting to unload the shipment, leading to his arrest. Observing the Count's behaviors closely, Mercedes deduced that he is, in fact, Edmond Dantès. However, the Count despised her because of the fact that Mercedes married Fernand soon after his arrest and subsequently bore Fernand's son, Albert. Edmond harbored deep resentment towards Mercedes for marrying the man responsible for his imprisonment, which made him keep her at a distance, and despite her insistence that he is Edmond, he continued to deny it. The Count also discovered that Villefort had falsely declared Edmond dead shortly after his imprisonment. It turned out that Fernand was the one who made Villefort tell Mercedes and Edmond's father that Edmond was killed so that he will gain the hand of Mercedes in exchange for killing Villefort's father because Villefort lacked the courage to do it himself. Villefort was tricked into admitting all this heinous plot within earshot of the authorities, leading to his arrest. In an unexpected turn of events during a confrontation with Mercedes at his residence, he unintentionally disclosed critical information, which therefore made him confess his true identity, what happened to him and where he had been all these years. He angrily rebuked Mercedes for marrying the very man responsible for putting him in prison. In response to this revelation, Mercedes unveiled her string wedding ring, symbolizing her enduring devotion to him throughout the years. This moment made them rekindle their love. Meanwhile, Fernand's financial downfall, a result of both his gambling issues and bad business investments that were manipulated by Edmond from behind the scenes, compelled him to flee Paris, desperate to escape mounting debts and legal consequences brought to light by Villefort's confession. Unwilling to follow Fernand in his escape with their son, Mercedes disclosed the truth. She revealed that Albert was not Fernand's biological son, but rather the offspring of her union with Edmond, conceived before Edmond's arrest. As Fernand's life crumbled around him, he decided to abandon Mercedes and Albert. Fernand arrived at the anticipated location where he and Villefort had planned to keep the stolen treasure, only to be met with the sight of empty chests. It is at that moment that the Count revealed himself as Edmond and confronted Fernand about his betrayal. In the midst of this confrontation, Albert, unaware of the truth, intervened to protect his father. Believing the Count to be an unfaithful traitor who had stolen Mercedes from their family, Edmond, also unaware that Albert is his son, threatened to kill him if he didn't move out of his way, but before he could, Mercedes arrived at the scene. She disclosed the shocking revelation that Edmond is Albert's biological father. The revelation left Albert in a state of shock, compounded by the realization that Fernand was willing to let his own son engage in a potentially lethal fight with his biological father just to save himself. In this vulnerable moment, Fernand seized the opportunity, threatening to shoot Albert in order to escape. Edmond pleaded for Albert's life, offering to abandon his quest for revenge in exchange. But still Fernand was willing to shoot. Just as he was about to, Jacopo intervened by injuring Fernand with a well-aimed knife toss, but in the chaos, Fernand's gun discharged, inadvertently wounding Mercedes in the process. As Albert, Jacopo, and Edmond tended to Mercedes, Fernand rode away but only to realize how miserable he had become. He realized that his life was now over with no money, status, family, or innocence in the eyes of the law to support him. He therefore came back and demanded for Edmond to come out and face him. Jacopo provided solace to Edmond, emphasizing that confronting Fernand is the only viable resolution to bring an end to this whole ordeal. He reassured Edmond that even Abbé Faria would understand. Fernand told Edmond that he couldn't live in a world where Edmond now has everything and he has nothing. The tension escalated into a violent clash between Edmond and Fernand, and ended with Edmond killing Fernand. Sometime later, Edmond returned to the Château d'If after he had purchased it. Before he walked off the island with his family, he made a promise to Abbé Faria and God that all that was used for vengeance will now be used for good.